Okay, so now let's get back to sections and questions and talk about the last item of our training today. And so sections and questions, you've built your application. Remember, the general information is the control center for each application, how the actual application is to function as a full. But sections and questions are where you build each individual section. Now, when you have an application, you have if you're coming from a paper, you more than likely have pages and pages of your application. But when you're building an online version, you want to partition it off into sections. Not the smaller the section, but sections help performance on your site. It helps things run more efficient on your site. So you don't want a ton of information in a section, like a super long section. Of course, this is something that we'll build for you, but when you first come here, you have this section listing on one that's been built already. If it's a fresh one, then of course you don't have any sections here. But here is where you're going to see the sections that we've built for you. And this is the name that we've given them. This is the name that the applicant's going to see. The grant site, it's the exact same. You're going to see, I'm going to click on that just so you'll know. So same fields, same information. So when we're building the application, we start with a section, and then within the section, we start building questions. So sections are the key areas. So that are part of the application process. You can kind of see some of the examples we have here of sections that we create, and then based on those sections, related questions we'll put underneath each of those sections. Let me open a grant site so you can see some of them. We have organization. This is a grant site. Fiscal sponsor. You can see there's one of those request sections. Agreements. There's different types of sections that we're building. And so we'll talk about how those are built here in a minute. The activation column, this is if it's checked, that means that when applicants are looking at the application, and based on when you activate this section, you can activate it based on statuses. If it's activated, it'll go live immediately when that status is hit. So activated means they're live. If it's not selected, then that means that the applicants won't be able to see that until it's actually been activated. If you want to deactivate something, you just simply come here and click Save. Deactivate it means it's still there, it's just not part of the application process at the moment. And then when you want to bring it back, you would have to select it and then hit Save, and then that would be on every applicant's dashboard. So of course, if there's sections here that are part of the initial application, you do not want to activate those once you've gone live if it's something that's going to affect all of those applicants based on that status, which we'll talk about in a minute. And then of course, once you have a section, you click on it. I'm just going to click on it real quick. You have all the questions built within it. That'll be in the next training session on how to build the questions. And then a very important element with mapping in the system, and grant users especially, you may have users coming in and applying, and you want them to be able to import from one application to another. If you clone an application, the XML name is going to stay the same from application to application. So in order for stuff to import down, if someone starts an application and you want them to be able to import data from a prior application, that XML is how the system maps. That's how it finds that section in the next application. If that XML name is changed, it will not be able to find it and import the data. So once you create an application and you're going forward and you're cloning and cloning and cloning, do not change the XML name if you need data to push down from one application to another. Or if you're running global reports, if you change the XML name from one year to another, you will not be able to run global reports. And then we'll get into section types, section deadlines. Some sections can have their own deadline. You'll notice is when I clone though, it brings over all the deadlines. When you're creating a section from scratch, a brand new section, then of course you won't have that. And then conditions are used when we create the application. When you see a green condition, and this is one that we've built. This is where you're going to set conditions. So this is the logic that makes this section appear. So you can say maybe they have to answer something a certain way in this section here, answer a question. When they answer that question, then this section needs to appear. And so that's going to be something, anytime you see green, that's where we've set that logic. So this logic, you can see, wow, we have a lot of logic. And so this is saying when the applicants are matched to certain scholarships, then they need a FAFSA. They need their financial information. So these are the scholarships. If they match to them, then show the FAFSA screen. And so that's how that logic is set. Anytime you see green, that means there's been conditions set on that. And then of course, if you want to set conditions, you would you can do add conditions here by doing multiple. You can select multiple and add those conditions by clicking the add condition. And you can see to add conditions on all of them that I've selected, it'll add the same condition. And then it's a matter of what's the section that houses the conditional logic, the conditional question, and then how do they have to answer that specific question. And that one, this one would say they have to say yes to this question in order for this section to appear. As soon as they say yes, that question would appear. So that's basic setting of logic. There is a user guide on creating logic, but that's basic. And that's if you're doing multiple. And then of course, if you want to do a single one, you just simply click the add edit here, and then you build that logic onto that single specific section. So I'm going to go over here. The display order is the order that it appears on this application. And here is a trash can. If you delete a section, it's gone forever. So you more than likely do not want to delete because you will not be able to get that back. If you delete the section, all the questions, all the items, any applicant that had answered that, then that information will be gone as well. Now there is a warning that does tell you that if you're deleting an application that applicants have already applied to, then it will give you a warning letting you know that, but it is also, just so you know, when you delete, it will be gone forever. You also have a preview here where you can preview a built section to see how it looks to the applicants from the back end. So that gives you a little preview